slapping time. I was holding Bobby's hand in mine. We sang every song that Johnny moved.
That is Janis Joplin singing Me and Bobby McGee, and it's a really great place to start talking about Kris Kristofferson. In some ways, that song symbolizes the story of his life and career, and the tragic story of how it came to be will really help you understand Kris. She cut that song just days before she died of a heroin overdose in October 1970. She and Kris were kind of an on-again, off-again couple at the time. Quote, "I liked her sense of humor," he told People in 1999. "I was doing a lot of drinking then, and she was trying to kick heroin." Of course, he didn't hear her version until after she died, and her death tore Kris up, but he persevered. Y'all, 1970 for Kris Kristofferson was sort of like 1990 for Garth Brooks. He officially arrived after years of hard work and hustling. Several of his most well-known hits would get released in the early 70s, and we'll talk about a few of those in a moment and explain why Kris never really had a hit as an artist. It's kind of mean, a little bit funny, but maybe true? I don't know. You'll get to decide in the comments section below. That plus Kris's best movies, including one that was so powerful it convinced him to quit drinking. I'm really not sure we're here if not for this all-timer. Subscribers know that we cover the legends with the respect they deserve, so thank you once again for trusting us to tribute a country music icon.
It's your time, so help me make it through the night.
That's another one of those Kristofferson hits. He more or less made Sammy Smith's career with Help Me Make It Through the Night, a Grammy winner in 1971.
But I lit my first and watched a small kid cussing at a can that he was kicking.
This Johnny Cash song won him a CMA for Song of the Year in 1970. It's Kris's only CMA award, which is really stunning, but sometimes greatness doesn't get you the trophy.
And make believe you love me one more time.
Ray Price for The Good Times was another #1 hit. I love this stat. At the 1972 Grammys, there were 5 nominees in the Best Country Song category. Kris Kristofferson wrote 3 of them. He must have felt pretty good about his odds, right? At the end of this video, I'm going to play a whole bunch of other Kris Kristofferson songs, but some of the well-known titles you'll recognize include The Taker by Waylon Jennings, Please Don't Tell Me How the Story Ends by Bobby Bare, I'd Rather Be Sorry by Patti Page, and Why Me, which he took to #1 in 1972. It was his only artist hit aside from collaborations with artists like Rita Coolidge and the Highwaymen. I found an old CBS News article where Willie Nelson was asked about his good friend's voice, and he said, it was a damn good thing he could write. Ouch. Around this time, Kris started acting, but before we get to that, and the movie scene that saved his life, a little bit about his raising, and I promise this won't take more than 30 seconds. Born in 1936 in Brownsville, Texas, and his father, a U.S. Army officer, really wanted him to join the military. He showed promise as a writer early on by writing a pair of award-winning essays, but a Rhodes Scholarship took him to the University of Oxford in the late 50s. There he wrote, boxed, played rugby, and more or less became a Renaissance man. Then he joined the Army, which, I mean, no disrespect to anyone who serves, but in the timeline of Kris's life, these years were a really hard pivot. And he knew it too. Kris turned down a job teaching at West Point and instead moved to Nashville, where he took a job sweeping floors at the Columbia Recording Studio. Yeah, his family was not pleased, and they disowned him after that. A few years later, he'd land a helicopter on Johnny Cash's front yard, and bam! His career took off. Yeah, that's really kind of oversimplifying things, and I dropped a link to that Chopper story in the description section, but it's the nuts and bolts of who Kris is. He was also a raging alcoholic. Quote, I thought all serious artists were self-destructive, that anybody worth their salt was going to be out there living on the edge. That's how Kris lived as he filmed movies like Cisco Pike, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, and Vigilante Force. Later roles would include Heaven's Gate and 2 Blade movies.
Crosses don't do squat. Some of the legends are true, though. Vampires are severely allergic to silver.
Stagecoach and Convoy were 2 more. I got a chuckle out of this comment on one of our other videos about Kris. It's a reference to his character, Rubber Duck, in Convoy.
Thanks, friends. Y'all sure know how to mess up a birthday party, man. Well, it's late now, so let's just be getting out of here. It's too dark. Go get it.
Without a doubt, Kris's most famous role was as John Norman Howard in A Star Is Born.
Strike the sun and give her a pink spot.
You are crazy. You gotta go back there. They're gonna get mad at you. Go back on the stage.
I'm not sure if we need a spoiler alert for a movie that's 50 years old, but spoiler alert. This scene was extremely powerful in theaters, but it also changed Kris's life. He watched that death scene and connected his character to his own life. Really rattled him. I remember feeling that could very easily be my wife and kids crying over me. I quit drinking over that. I didn't want to die before my daughter grew up. At this point, he was married to Rita Coolidge, his popular duet partner in the 70s, and rumors were he was cheating on her with several people, including Barbra Streisand, his A Star Is Born co-star. When you look at old pics, you can kind of see what he had going for him. I mean, dude was good looking, he could write, he had charisma, but he also had 3 kids and tried really hard to settle down. In fact, when he met future wife Lisa at the gym in 1982, he tried to tell her he didn't have time for a full relationship. It didn't work. 5 kids, and 42 years later, she'd be the one sharing the news of his death. I've got a separate video in mind showing how essential she was to giving us more time with Kris, but the short version is she stayed vigilant when he was first diagnosed with Alzheimer's, eventually figuring out that he had Lyme disease. It's a really crazy story, and I'm going to drop links to it all as they become available. That list of songs is next, but first, a few of country music's most powerful responses to Kris Kristofferson's death. What a gentleman, Reba McEntire shared. What a great loss, said Dolly Parton. Thank you for teaching us to write, says Ashton McBride. Thank you for being a beacon of light in a darkening world, said Eric Church. There are so many, many more, and once again I linked below. I'm Billy Dukes for Taste of Country. Thanks for watching, and thanks for subscribing.
There were other lonely singers in a world turned deaf and blind, who were crucified for what they tried to show.
Lord, it took me back to something that I lost somehow, somewhere along the way. Are you still into burning the bridges you crossed? Holy cow.
I know, John, there ain't nothing you can't handle now, 'cause there ain't nothing bigger than your heart. Soaring like an eagle, skipping like a stone, coming from the heartbeat, nothing but the truth now.